The 4th annual Law Enforcement Basketball Tournament is coming, March 17th through 23rd. Law enforcement basketball teams from throughout the Caribbean will compete as we display the Caribbean spirit of camaraderie. Dominica, Cayman Islands, Turks and Caicos, Trinidad and Tobago, all competing for the prestigious championship trophy. But they have to go through the Royal Bahamas Defense Force and Her Majesty's prisons before they can meet defending champions, the Royal Bahamas Police Force. There will also be a clash of the East versus West Senior Boys High School Championship, along with the annual slam dunk and three-point competition. The winner will receive a scholarship prize. That's right, the 4th annual Law Enforcement Basketball Tournament, March 17th through 23rd. You don't want to miss this one.
Good evening, Bahamas. You're tuned into MB12, broadcasting from Cable 12 Studios on Robinson Road. Coming up tonight in news, a man tells of his struggles after being shot in the head by police. We'll have to wait and see if the courts lift that injunction preventing web shops from being closed. How the U.S. Embassy is making it easier for you to get your visa. We've got those stories and so much more coming up. I'm Paige McCartney, and MB12 starts right now. Welcome once again to MB12. Police-involved shootings have been on the incline in recent years. Just last year, police shot more than half a dozen people. It's an experience that 46-year-old Ronaldo Newbold knows all too well. 17 years ago, he was shot in the head by an officer who has since risen through the ranks of the force. Luckily, Newbold lived to tell that story, but he says he's still waiting for some satisfaction. Jasmine Bonamy reports.
More than a decade after he was shot by police on the streets of New Providence, Newbold says it's a memory he will carry for the rest of his life.
Life changed dramatically for Newbold after he was shot in the head without justification outside his home in 1996. Since then, Sergeant 1003 Kendall Strawn, the officer who shot him, has been promoted. Just 29 years old at the time, Newbold was a houseman at the Nassau Beach Hotel when Strawn and his partner PC 660 Carlton E. Forbes followed him home and opened fire on February 24, 1996, a 2001 court document revealed. Forbes is no longer a policeman. Before the shooting, Newbold had picked up his aunt, Beryl Folks, and his cousin Paulette Brown from the airport. As they headed to Flamingo Gardens, they encountered a roadblock and police let them through.
My wife told me that how she was, at the time she was pregnant with my son now, who's now 6 or 17. He born, I think, that 2 months after I got shot, you know. And like I said, it was a lot of trauma. To tell you the truth, from day one they admitted that they was wrong after the fact, but still it was still a battle, and I still had to get legal action because I know for a fact that they didn't have anything on me as far as I'm being a criminal. I did anything wrong. I was just being a normal citizen, just like any of you right now in this room. If you guys were driving the car at night, you could have been the victim just like me, okay? Don't matter who it is. And that's why I tell you, it hurts me right now sometimes, the way I feel when I see certain things happen.
Days after the shooting, the government expressed regret, describing the shooting as an accident and promised to pay all his medical expenses. But the matter was not settled until November 2001, when Supreme Court Judge John Lyons awarded Newbold more than $500,000 in compensation. But it would be another 6 years before a single penny of the judgment was paid out. He said his lawyer deducted $150,000 from the settlement for his fees, which he said would be recovered during taxation. That still hasn't happened, Newbold said. Newbold, who still has bullet fragments lodged in his head, could not work for 15 years after the shooting. His wife, a waitress, had to take care of the household and their 5 children. While he is still awaiting the majority of his payout, Newbold, who has never been arrested or charged with any crime, is thankful that he survived to tell his story.
I was an active young man. I said active, you know. First of all, I'm a lover of basketball who used to play every day. before that incident. I couldn't do that. I can't do that anymore. I was always a seaman who loved to go in my boat, go under the water, and all that stuff. I can't do that stuff no more. Yes, I could still go there and throw my line in the water, but my love was going under the water, and I can't do that anymore. I mean, yes, even my speech sometime. I have a slur in my speech sometime. I want to say one word and something else will come out, not quite, which is not complaint. I'm just saying what the facts is. Because, like I say, I can recall after I came back from Miami, a gentleman got shot in his leg and he died. I got a shot in my head and one in my back, 2 shots, and I'm still here to tell the story. I'm thankful, but it still affected my life, you know, in a way that I would say it ain't the worst. It ain't the worst, but it affected me, and I have to live with it. I have to live with it. And every day I get up and I go out there, people see my big scar in my head, and they ask me, what happened? See, and I hate to talk about it. You know, okay, I hate to talk about it like that because I say, you know what, sometimes I get really emotional with it. You know, I say, man, like, it happened. I got shot. I had to cut off that part of my head, take out the bullet, and whatever the case may be. They had to put something and keep it in there.
For the past 2 years, Newbold has worked as a tour bus driver. Last year, police fatally shot 6 people under disputed circumstances. Reporting for NB12, I'm Jasmine Bonamy.
A conservatory order protecting web shops from government interference remains in place. This after lawyers for the web shop owners appeared in court today, not prepared to give substantive arguments in the case before Chief Justice Sir Michael Barnett. Attorneys Alfred Sears and Jeffrey Lloyd represent Paradise Games. Wayne Monroe represents the owners of Island Game, Island Luck, FNL Group of Companies, Asu Draw, What Fall, and Chances. Monroe was a no-show in court today, but Sears told the Chief Justice that lawyers for the web shop owners had only received an affidavit from the AG's office late Friday afternoon, and they had not enough time to prepare rebuttal arguments. Outside court, Sears explained further.
We were served with an affidavit, a quite extensive affidavit on Friday, and we have not had an opportunity to take instructions from client with respect to that affidavit. We will do so over the course of the next week and prepare any reply that we have to the affidavit. It's a conservatory order which was given by Mr. Justice John Isaacs, and is pending the determination of the Chief Justice, who will be hearing the application for an injunction.
Meantime, senior counsel at the Attorney General's office, Lauren Klein, says the Crown is ready to present its arguments.
We were before the court this morning was because it was their application, and we are fully ready to go and proceed. Unfortunately, they were not ready. Of course, they have claimed they need additional time to respond to the affidavit. I mean, and in the circumstances, perhaps that is fair. This is an interlocutory application, and we can't have the hands of the Crown tied by an interlocutory injunction, which in effect prevents the police and law enforcement authorities from carrying out their statutory functions. And as a matter of fact, we think it's a strategy to escape having to meet the legal requirements for the grant of an injunction. The conservatory order which was granted by the court was only an interim conservatory order, which was only meant to last until they can make an application for an injunction, and that is what should have been heard this morning.
Back on February 26th, nearly 1 month after 7 web shops were granted an injunction by Senior Justice John Isaacs, Attorney General Allison Maynard Gibson sought to have it removed. Attorneys representing major web shops in the Bahamas took action on January 30th, 2 days after the majority of voters rejected the regulation and taxation of web shops and the establishment of a national lottery. The substantive arguments in this case will be heard when all sides appear before the Chief Justice on April 2nd. Well, earlier this year, the United States Embassy issued a warning to Americans living in and traveling to New Providence to be aware of the recent surge in violent crimes in the country. That was not the first time the embassy issued such a warning. Last May, the U.S. Department of State rated the crime threat level on New Providence as critical and high on Grand Bahama. This has been a major concern for local officials who continue to lament the negative impact the country's crime problem can have on the tourism industry. But according to Acting Deputy Chief of Missions for the U.S. Embassy, John Armstrong, the facts are plain and the embassy is obligated to protect all of its people.
Bahamian officials, average Bahamians, American diplomats, other diplomats have noticed that there's a serious situation. You know, the murder rate has recently dropped some, and that's a good sign. But some other crimes, based by what the media said and the Bahamian law enforcement officials, unfortunately the trend has been in a different direction. When we warn our citizens, a lot of time we look at the situation. And again, we have an obligation to tell them, just as Bahamian diplomats or the Bahamian government would if there was a situation somewhere in the United States or anywhere else in the world.
However, the Deputy Chief of Mission commended the efforts made by Bahamian law enforcement. In the statement earlier this year, the embassy pointed out that while the majority of violent incidents involved mainly Bahamians in over-the-hill areas, there were reports of tourists that were targeted in 2011 in popular tourist hotspots.
Every state, every country in the world, one of the main things their diplomats do is look out for the safety of their citizens, whether it's Bahamian diplomats in the United States or China, whether it's U.S. diplomats in the Bahamas or Brazil. And when there's something that might threaten citizens, we have an obligation to warn them.
Well, we'll have a little more from the U.S. Embassy later in the news, but first, the Ministry of Tourism is aiming to attract 7 million visitors to the Bahamas in 2015, and it appears the country's on the right track, recently recording the highest number of visitors. Recently, our Nakia DeVoe was in the House of Assembly today when the latest tourism figures were released. Here's her report.
With a record number of visitors last year, the tourism sector saw a growth of 7.2%. And according to Tourism Minister Obi Wilshcombe, we can expect more growth this year.
So last year, the Bahamas ended the year with a record number again, 5.9 million, Mr. Speaker, 5.9 million visitors. Mr. Speaker, that tells you that we're about to head to the 7 million that I'm projecting that we'll get to in another 2 years.
In 2011, the Bahamas saw 5.5 million visitors. That was a 4.6% increase from 2010. Wilshcombe says the increases signal hope for major growth in the industry. The World Travel Tourism Organization recently reported that the Bahamas' #1 industry is likely to grow by 5.3% this year. And although it is still too early to tell if that will be the case, the minister said the first few months of the year already look promising.
The numbers are looking good. Numbers and spend. Overnight visitors are looking good. Overnight visitors in the capital city, overnight visitors in Grand Bahama, and of course you have the cruise ship business, Mr. Speaker, continuing to provide those incredible numbers that we're seeing every single day in the cruise industry. Just 2 Fridays ago, we had 26,000 cruise passengers just on Bay Street, 26,000.
According to Wilshcombe, preliminary reports also show that tourist spending is up, particularly from cruise passengers. However, the ministry is waiting on the official numbers from the Central Bank of the Bahamas before those figures are released.
But despite that increase, Wilshcombe says that visitors are requesting a better product, and many of them say they want to experience more culture.
The customers are telling us that you got to fix your service. The customers are saying, yes, we want more beach. We want more entertainment. We want more things to do. We want more things to buy. We want to participate more in your culture. They want a better product, Mr. Speaker. And so you can spend the money on your marketing. You can spend the money on your advertisement. You can spend the money on everything else you do, Mr. Speaker. But if you don't have a product, well, they'll go somewhere else.
The tourism minister said many changes need to be made to keep visitors coming back. He added that the cost of energy needs to be significantly reduced and many procedures involving visitors need to be improved. From his ministry's end, Wilshcombe said there are plans to turn Junkanoo Beach into a cultural center and to put a craft center at Arawak Key. There are also plans to strengthen the tourism sector's stronghold in North America while targeting Europe, Asia, and Latin America. Reporting for NB12, I'm Nakia DeVoe.